name is Brother Kevin Davis, and I'm a native Detroiter, but I live in Chicago, and I'm the first vice president of the Upsilon Nu Sigma chapter here in Chicago. I'm not going to go through all of this. This is whoever doesn't know me, this will be your introduction. Um, but I've been serving in this capacity started out under Brother Crystal, Brother President Crystal, also under Brother President Ray. And so it's good to be able to continue to work and also prepare to pass the baton over. And so I've been really, really passionate about this marketing and branding work because it's so important. If you look at the history, you've seen a lot of brothers arguing and bickering about different things that they were taught when they were initiated into the fraternity. And that's our fault as an organization. For the longest, we were operating as essentially seven different organizations, and even more than that when you start to break down different states within the different regions. And so, what this committee has been interested in and tasked with and has been successful with is developing those brand standards to educate brothers on why it's important to define clear brand standards for the fraternity, so we're not arguing about what someone thinks or what someone perceives. We have a documented procedure and process for everything. And so we've been revising that since 2017. And so now we're not having the same conversations. Now we're having a conversation with the education committee. We're showing an overlap between marketing and branding and STEM. And so this touches me at my work. And so it just made perfect sense for us to connect here today on AI Adoption Day.
Yeah, I'm get my stuff set up for my. Or you mean like
Uh,
when you from the couch, right?
Somebody needs to get muted. Is
Okay.
that brother president?
Oh, sorry.
And so there's a few things I'm going to get into today. Today will be an introduction to what we've been calling ethical AI in terms of heralding, defending, and protecting the brand of Sigma. We're also going to walk through a little bit of what the latest brand guide looks like. We're going to talk about the vendor program, but then also the enforcement piece, because that's the part that matters the most. So, in thinking about AI and having this conversation, one thing that I don't want brothers to feel like is that if you see Kevin, that's the fun police or the brand police. That's not what it is. It's how do we find common ground in everything that we're doing so that there are guardrails in place to safeguard the brand of the fraternity and to make sure that we are maintaining the integrity of the organization and we're not allowing so much deviation and change to occur within the organization. And so we had this conversation right at around Founders Day when we started to see everybody creating all sorts of graphics, videos, you name it. And it was good to see so many people embracing AI and generative AI creating graphics and things like that. But that can be very damaging and cause so many issues in terms of the brand of the fraternity. And so when we talk about use of generative AI in Phi Beta Sigma, the way we're looking at it is in terms of integrity and respect. And so just making sure that it aligns with the principles of the brotherhood and reflects the values we uphold as Sigma men, thinking about the protection of identity, which is the visual and symbolic identity of the fraternity, and making sure that we preserve it without distortion, alteration, unauthorized use. Historical sanctity, the likeness, legacy, and dignity of our founders should be honored and protected at all times, which we'll get into a little bit later. Accuracy and accountability, making sure that members are ultimately responsible for any content they generate, publish, or disseminate using AI tools. AI does not excuse error or misrepresentation. And then the last and most important part here is data and excuse me, privacy and data security. The fraternity data, member information, and any confidential or ritual related material must never be uploaded into public AI tools. At my job, we are a Microsoft shop, so we use Copilot, which is a walled garden, meaning all of our information stays inside of there. People are having whole conversations with ChatGPT and with their personal needs, sharing emails, their behavioral wellness things. That is all training a public model or a public language with your information. And so you're going to make sure that you preserve all that information and you're using the proper tools. I use Copilot at work. I also have a Claude account, and I'm in school, so I get some access there as well. But you have to make sure there's a walled garden up, so you're not you're not letting the ease of use and access set you up for failure and get all your information out there. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is the adoption of an AI policy for the fraternity. And so we're going to go over some of those things that we would like to consider for that. There will be an AI policy added to the brand guide, and we'll be presenting that to the general board for consideration in collaboration with the education committee. And so the things we're talking about now, get comfortable with them because you will see them later. But the first thing here is when you're thinking about our founders, and with that, we have like a strict prohibition on recreating things with our founders. The likes of our founders are sacred and irreplaceable, and generative AI should not be used to modify, animate, reimagine, or deep fake any depiction of the founders. And I know that there's some talented brothers that did some amazing work earlier this year, making creating some videos and things like that with the founders. But the downside of that was they started adding different language to it. It's like that's what the founders thought. And it's like you can't make something that you think the founders may have thought and put it out there because brothers don't know the difference. And they will begin to share it. You look up and we'll have a video out here about the mythical letter between us and the Kappas and all kind of stuff like that. It'll be shared and be like, see the founder, to stay away from it. Now, that's not to say that there may not be opportunities to work with the international headquarters to commission some work, which means it's been vetted through the history committee and things like that. But for members, that is off ground. Also, generating voice clones, audio simulations, and video portrayals of the founders. Again, if you're going to work with IHQ, that's one thing, but on your own, you don't have permission to do that either. And it is just a dangerous scenario. We talked a little bit about the what if scenarios featuring the founders, just leave that alone. And so we want to make sure that we keep the information that we have about our founders, we keep that moving forward. We're constantly finding new photos and things like that. Let's work with what's real and what we have and what's been vetted and not create mythical information. And now you look up, and it'll be like the early 2000s was. It was all sorts of Phi Beta Sigma stuff all over the internet that had nothing to do with anything. And so we don't want a repeat of the early 2000s, which is when I came to fraternity. And it took a while to clean that up, but we're a much better fraternity at this point because we did that. So the shields, crests, seals, badges, do not use generative AI to generate or clean those up. Um, Generative AI is not built for the level of detail that we have in our identifiers in the fraternity. You know, I was looking at Brother Rowe's graphic there. It looked a little distorted. I didn't know if that was my screen or if that was AI generated on there or not, but
Wait a
it's
minute,
just not
sir.
built. What'd you say?
Wait a minute, sir. My graphics are crisp.
So it may be my screen, but as y'all see, we gotta be consistent about it. Because at the end of the day, if you let something slide, then somebody says, "Well, Kevin, you let that go," or whoever the committee let that go. But you check in on brothers and just make sure what you see is true or not. Also, do not produce any ritualistic or regalia elements using generative AI, which we'll talk about a little bit later, um, and pulling apart different pieces using AI to kind of create different graphs and things like that. When we put these things out into these different models, that allows other systems to use this information. It's not that our identifiers are secrets, but they are sacred, meaning we should respect them. And we do have quality reproductions in Blueprint that you can download. And brothers know if they can't find it there, they can reach out to me or a member of my committee, and we'll make sure we get that over to them. So on the flip side, here are some permitted uses or best practices for using AI. So uh, administrative and operational tasks. And my chapter does this all the time. We will put our minutes in there. We have a standard format. We put our minutes and agendas in there and say, organize this, and it'll do that for us. We run our internal communications through there to make sure it's consistent. We can create some budget outlines or program frameworks or for submitting our PIAs or anything like that. We make sure we put some information in there to keep it clean. We do not put member data. We do not put financial records or ritual related information in there. Again, that is training a model for the public. So unless your chapter has a very secure walled garden, I highly recommend not to do that. Also, we use it for educational and research content, so creating study guides and summarizing non-fraternity specific articles, assisting with scholarship applications, personal review and revision, drafting biographies of the founders and chapter charter members, chapter histories. That's a great use for it, as long as you can verify that against the official fraternity sources. Again, when we said that when you upload things into this public model, AI is going to pull from a different resource, and that resource may not be accurate. And so, if all brothers are sharing some misinformation, when other brothers go search for it, it's going to pull as a related hit, and it's going to say this is the source, and that source is wrong. So you want to make sure you verify the information that you're putting out there before it goes live. Another good idea is generating social media topics. So if you want to post some content, you may have an event, say, hey, let's summarize this caption or this event. Just make sure you have somebody else in the chapter to look at it. You always want to have someone else look at the copy before you post it. I know, I know my limitations. I will see something and it will look right. I will send it to somebody and there will be like 5 words missing because in my head I read it as I thought it, but I didn't type it as I thought it. So making sure you have somebody else to verify what's going on, and then also just coming up with some different content for um, things that are coming up. So if you run out of ideas, hey, what are some things we can post about the chapter? Use it as a great tool to help generate content. And so I talked about this a little bit earlier here. It's just not to upload confidential information, member data, prospect information, financial records, or ritual content in any public AI tool. That can go a long way. That's a whole risk management issue. Things may happen, and now your whole system is subject to discovery for some purpose. You never know what's going to happen. And so don't put any information out there, and you never know who's going to have access to that information. So we're available, use enterprise or organization approved AI platforms. So I don't know if in the future there will be a Phi Beta Sigma approved platform, that we use and we say, hey, this is our walled garden, so to speak. And with that, the benefit is you can load all of your information that you don't mind brothers having access to. So it serves as a repository, your internal library. So that's a conversation for another day. But some chapters, if they have a 501(c)(3) status, they may be eligible for some of the different platforms. They have a free version for nonprofits, which are a walled garden. So we have to start thinking in the future as a fraternity as well. Whenever possible, excuse me, disable the turn on user content, train user content. Whenever you have that option, so you're not training that public learning model, and then redact all personal or sensitive data before using AI features, even in approved platforms. So this could be even something, on an individual level for brothers. If you're putting your resume in there and you want it to revise it, take your name out, take your email out, take your address out or your zip. I mean, that shouldn't be in there anyway, but take all that information out of it and let it process just based on what's there. So just kind of get in the habit of putting information in there, but stripping anything that could be identifiable, even in a approved environment. And so here's some recent examples of some generative AI that I've seen over here. I don't know if you all can see my mouse, but there are some things missing here. I don't know what that is right here. Looks like a mini swastika or something. Who knows? But it's not right, is the point. So somebody used generative AI and it got close, but you can't read the founding year. It's all messed up. This one over here, this is a message that came out from a state director and used generative AI, and I'm saving the brother.
Are you are you are you redacting it to protect the innocent?
I am redacting it here because I didn't want anybody, brothers need to stay focused. But if you look at this version of our shield up here is incorrect, and then even the platform created a different version behind here. The main issue is this right here, right? We start generating pictures of the founders, their likenesses start to go away. Then, depending on the image, everybody looks the same, but with a different font is the best way to put it. So we want to make sure that whenever possible, use actual photos. There's a lot of photos that we have of brothers, and sometimes brothers will post in the barbershop group on Facebook a request. Do you all have photos that we can use for our events? So there's a time and a place for generative AI in terms of faces. When it's recreating people that existed, that is a challenge. Here's some other examples. And I responded to both of these when I saw these online. I don't even know. Look, all of these are wrong. All of these are wrong. And folks didn't even care. They were just like, whatever. My organization's represented, so we don't care. I don't know what these things are representing Phi Beta Sigma. All of them are wrong. But this is what happens. Folks get super excited and they go to their favorite generative AI tool, put something in there, and it pops out a graphic. They don't have the same eye as most of us do now, as Sigmas. They also don't care. They don't care how it represents their organization. And they don't understand the impact that it has when you're using these incorrect images for each of these organizations. And every single one of these shields or coat of arms or whatever is available online for free. You can find a better version somewhere. So these are the things that are out there. I could have done a whole presentation just on examples, but I kept it simple there. I did want to shout out Brother Jeff Evans. I was going back through a Facebook group, and he was giving some advice to brothers, and I appreciated it on what he was saying, and just use the official shield, no approximations or alter versions. Don't put Greek letters on children. Our sigma betas are auxiliary. So he went through and was telling brothers this is how you can effectively use AI to create an image and it be in compliance, for the most part with our brand standards. So I appreciate it, Brother Jeff Evans. If you know Brother Jeff Evans, let him know that I used his example here on a brother trying to make sure he educated other brothers on what appropriate AI, generative AI use looks like. I think he even mentioned on here to add the image on the back end and not create it. And so what I mean by that is if he created this image in generative AI, he may have added this image after because he downloaded it from somewhere and put it on top. Do not let generative AI generate the imagery. It just cannot handle it.
I think we have
So
a question
go ahead, brother.
from our lead fraternity designer,
Yep.
brother Ronald Hart Brown.
Good brother.
I'm sorry first. I just had to chime in real quick because I know you gave the example, but I want it to be real time. I also still, and you can speak to this on that example, still has some issues with it because brothers shouldn't be using the shield in and of itself. They should be using the seal.
Right. And not this blue one that was added to make it look good on designs back in the day. But yes, that is correct. We should be using the seal, which you see on this side of the design. One example here of, I think this was, I forgot which platform it was, but I tried to make it create a slide for me, and it basically told me no. I think it was either Copilot or DeepSeek. I used one of those two. And so I said, come up with a PowerPoint cover with basically the name of the presentation. And it says, I can't generate the imagery, including specific seal of Phi Beta Sigma. It put me as creative, but I didn't create the seal. But I can tell you how to design it. And it says, since Brother Kevin Davis owns the seal file, basically go holler at him. So this platform recognized that there was some trademarked information in what I was requesting, and it said no. So it gave me the layout. Hey, you can do this, but I'm not going to do it for you, which I thought was kind of cool. That's not every platform. My daughter says hello. Every platform is not going to do that for you, but I thought that that was cool that it kicked it back and recognized that it's trademarked information. Go holler at this person to get the appropriate files. And as I come to the close on this section here, one thing to keep in mind is you don't own what you didn't create. And so even if you created something using generative AI, you ultimately don't own that, and unless that's specifically stated in your license. So keep that in mind as you're creating things for your chapter, different reports, all those types of things. Your chapter may have a nonprofit component, wants to kind of function as a social enterprise, and you want to have something for sale. You're going to need to wade through all of those different considerations, and the lack of knowledge does not excuse you from the lack of liability. So, just keep that in mind. You don't own what you didn't create. Brother Fowles?
Yeah, as we wrap up this section, one of the questions I had stemmed from how your chapter is using AI in general. So I wanted to see if y'all had a list of prompts that y'all use to kind of summarize those meetings and kind of what you ask your AI to do for you. Maybe we could standardize some of those prompts so that other brothers could use them as well.
Drop if you haven't already dropped that in the chat, so when I circle back, I can go back through and make sure that I can share that with you. Thank you, brother. So here's a quick reference guide in terms of general AI, something to consider, what you should use it for: drafting, for operations, non-branded visuals, meeting summaries, so on and so forth. If it's anything that may be external or forward facing, you may want to have someone else take a look at it, or may require a different level of intervention. And when I say intervention, that means creating something, but then adding it later, like adding the branding later. So public facing content, Founders Day, anniversaries, things like that. And so never allow, yeah, everything we talked about earlier, the founders, shields, imagery, letters, Greek stylized numerals, and apparel mock-ups implying official Sigma branding. Now, if you're a vendor or chapters looking to sell things, there are ways to use mock-ups, but that's outside of AI. So you can have an actual great representation of your product. If you have questions about that, you can reach out to me. You can also reach out to brother Ronald Hart Brown, who just spoke a minute ago on what that looks like. And so here's some resources, and I'll make sure that the brothers get this deck. I put them in a few different categories on a few different sources to use. We want to make sure that brothers embrace AI. We don't want you to feel like you were told you can't use it. That's not the message here. It's just we need to use it with some guardrails and parameters. There's tons and tons of creativity in between those two guardrails. So here's a ton of resources here, and it kind of gives you a little bit of breakdown of what they provide. But as you use these, keep in mind these parameters right here, or these considerations. So there's tons of information out there. There's no reason Sigma should not be the dopest fraternity in your city, on your campus, by utilizing the brand standards that we have, and then also utilizing these tools. Here, there's tons and tons of tools out here. Try something until you find what works for you. Everything's not going to work for every person. So I'll make sure that Brother Rowe and the committee, they have this deck here, that and you all have access to it.
So as mentioned before, I'm Brother Malik Smith, serving as the AI coordinator for the Zeta Sigma chapter. Tonight, I'm here to give you just a brief presentation. Hopefully, it takes about 20-ish minutes or so on how we can use AI to pretty much change in the way how we run our chapter business, plan events, handle personal life, and so on and so forth. So with that, let's get right into it. As you see here, there is an agenda. We have a few topics that we're going to go over. Once again, we're going to try to get this through in about 20 minutes, but we'll cover what AI actually is. We'll make sure to bust out a few myths. We'll look at some tools that are available for all of us to use. We'll then also go to building a real chapter document, which we'll go into as an example or demonstration later, and then we'll give it the opportunity for everybody to kind of use the AI as well. And that might be something that you guys do externally and hopefully bring back to your chapters. Before we go any further, I'm going to talk about some of these tools safely because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we are still being, we still understand the risk of privacy, right? So we want to make sure that all of our privacy settings are well maintained, and that we're going to go through these as we flag each one of them. So with that in mind, what is AI? So I feel like a lot of people think that AI is human, but it actually isn't. Here's the real definition. So AI is a software that learns from massive amounts of what we call large language models, or LLMs. And it produces what would be a mimic of human language. So, and with that in mind, it does make decisions, but it's more so from a prediction-based model. And how it goes is really three steps. AI finds a pattern. You send a prompt. Some people call it questions, but they're really called prompts. And then once you send that prompt, it responds based off of what it knows, right? So here's something important for a first step, which is the data that is going in. When you type something into a free AI tool, that information never disappears, right? And I know we've in the previous session, we talked about data mining and things like that. Depending on the platform and your settings, what type of information can train for further model analysis. So I want to make that very clear. These free models, yes, they seem nice to use. Yes, yes, you want to interact with them, but please be mindful of the information that you are putting into that. And one rule that I'm going to probably iterate 3 or 4 times in this presentation is that big red letter that you can see right there where it says AI can hallucinate, distrust, and verify. You're going to hear me say that multiple times throughout the presentation. So I just want to make sure everybody understands distrust and verify. Next slide. Okay. Next, we're going to go through the myths and the reality. So 3 things that you probably have heard. We're gonna cover those right now. How many people, and you can just type in the chat by saying here, how many people have heard AI is going to replace all jobs? I know I've heard it a few times. The industry is kind of going crazy about it, this, that, and third. The reality is AI does not replace jobs. It replaces tasks, and it allows automation within tasks for those people who are doing those jobs. Myth number 2, and once again, feel free to type in here. How many people are that you need to be technical in order to understand AI? Because in reality, that's not the case either. If you can send a text, if you can type into a phone number, if you know just the basic usage of any technology, you can use AI. So that you do not have to be a tech whiz to use AI. Lastly, and this is probably the most dangerous one, people believe that AI is the source of truth. And I'm here to tell you that AI can hallucinate. It is not something that is always 100% factual. In fact, you have to verify, you have to distrust and verify. So that's the second time. I'm going to continue to say that as we go along the presentation, but distrust and verify. Next, we're going to go through a few tools that we can use. So in this case, we have a few, and I have them broken up, but I'll kind of go in depth for each one of them. So of course, everybody knows ChatGPT. It's like the most well-known, greatest usage, I would say, is for more so writing and research. Claude is a lot more deeper writing and research, and within like actual understanding and demoing of like analysis and things like that.
Brother
In
Smith,
our, I'm sorry, brother Emmanuel, you had something to say? I'm sorry.
let me pause you 1 second. I think your
Mhm.
bandwidth is low because it's coming in choppy. So I'll remove you off of Spotlight. Try to turn off your camera and see if that helps out because we don't want to miss anything you got.
Got you. Got you. Give me 1 second. Does this sound better?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's run that.
Okay, perfect. Let me go back into the last slide. All right, perfect. So I don't know where everybody heard me at, but I went through ChatGPT and Claude and their usages. Microsoft Copilot is part of the 365 tool set. And so essentially, if you have Microsoft Word, Excel, Outlook, Microsoft Copilot is the AI usage for that. And Gemini works the same way except for Google Docs and Gmail. And then one that I would love brothers to actually incorporate a lot more. I know our chapter has started to implement it a lot more is Canva AI. So for those who need graphics, who want to get more design into or more creativity into AI video creations, things like that, Canva AI does it all. It's really, really good. Um, I must say that all of these do have free tiers, and I'm gonna go into it again. With those free tiers comes a sense of privacy issues, right? So with free AI accounts, yes, you can have a conversation. I'm sorry, Brother James, I thought you were saying something, but um, with these free AI accounts, you can have these conversations, right? But that data is used to enter and improve the models, right? So that data is read, stored, and learned in some different environment. So for casual usage, like if you say, hey, how do I respond to this text message? Help me brainstorm an idea, that's fine. But you never want to put chapter business, membership information, financial discussions into these free AI tools. The easiest way to protect yourself in most occasions, there's a lot of different ways, but in most occasions is one, set the privacy settings within the actual AI model that you're using. Two, a lot of these free accounts don't have it, but the paid versions of these accounts. So I know with Chat GPT Plus, with Claude Pro, they have a more secure privacy network for these individual paid subscribe accounts. That is another way to do it. And I think the third way to do it, I mean, really, it's just remove sensitive information. So instead of me saying, brother, act as Brother Davis to create an educational platform or something like that, you could just say act as community member to X, Y, and Z, one, two, and three. So like just redacting some of that sensitive information, that is another way in which you can kind of go about it with privacy. So next, we will go into the use cases. So as you can see here, I have a few different use cases, and you can really just pick any of them, and AI really helps automate it. I've used these in a lot of the different things that I do. So within career-wise, helping making better resumes. I've used Claude to help enhance my resume tremendously. Help automation with emails, whether it's like maybe you have a difficult discussion that you want to discuss with a team member or a lead or something like that, you can help AI to kind of you can use AI to kind of help you enhance with that. I know some people, I'm trying to get a little bit more fit, summer coming around. So for me, I've had it used for more so like meal prep and workout plans, things like that. So whichever way you want, AI can be utilized not just within fraternity business, but within your personal life as well. Finances, however well you want to see it. So here we have two different atmospheres, and I'll kind of go speak through both of these. So on the left, here's is what AI can do for the education excellence program, right? So you can build out study guides, STEM kits, scholarship letters, grant narratives, things like that. On the right-hand side is more so how do we get those accomplished, right? So the one thing that we would do is we want to act as a role. So we want to tell AI who it should be, whether it's like a chapter advisor, a committee chair, a grant writer, whatever, right? And then you want to give it a task. So with that, you want to say, hey, help me with a task. What do you need, right? Draft a letter, create an agenda, write a flyer, whatever that task is necessary for said role. And then you want to also include the details. With these details, these are specific details. So make sure you understand the audience, the length, the tone, the context in which you're speaking to. Having these details helps prompt the LLM really well, and it kind of gives you the more exact or precise output that you want. And at the end, of course, is the format in which the output is. So if whether you want it in bullet points, whether you want it as a time blocked, whether you want it as a PowerPoint or Word document, you want to make sure you always have those. So the four things that you will always need to make sure you prompt perfectly into an AI model is have a role, have a task, have the details, and have the format. One more thing is when you're filling in the details section, once again, we want to always reiterate into privacy, right? So privacy matters the most. If you're drafting a letter or something like that, um, if you're using the tool on a free version, please make sure to redact any sensitive information, the person's real name, any of the information why the scholarship is necessary. And that's just for us to keep privacy as a whole. So next, we're gonna have a demonstration, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so I can open my other screen
Like every time I check,
to
it's just
give a okay, perfect. When you all can see my screen, let me know. Are you all able to see my are you able to see
Not
on the
yet.
screen or
Not yet. It just says, there
not
you go.
yet? Okay.
It just came up.
Just came. Okay, hold up. Make sure. Okay, now it's telling me my internet is unstable. Try to make sure I'll refresh this page one more time. Hopefully I can get to where I may have to jump my phone.
What are we looking at, brother, while you're pulling up?
So actually, what we learned is a demonstration or example of how I use this for what. So I serve in the Zeta Sigma chapter as the Blue White Committee coordinator or the committee chair, and what I did was pretty much ask AI, "Hey, I want you to help me create an agenda for a Blue Moon Cookout committee meeting and pretty much have a detailed note section at the bottom so that I'm able to write in notes as we discuss each topic. Um, I didn't put it in that big because one thing that I want to emphasize that it's better to just feed it multiple prompts rather than giving it into big chunks. When you provide AI with big chunks, it gives you a large data set, and it's not really what you're looking for. So the exact prompt that I gave, and I don't know if it's showing up on the screen, but I'll just read it out, is act as a chapter event committee chair for Phi Beta Sigma. Help me create a meeting agenda for the Blue and White Cookout Planning Committee. Include a welcome and roll call, updates on venue, food, entertainment, volunteer coordination, a budget review, action items with owners, and the next meeting date. Format it into a clean time-blocked agenda for a 45-minute meeting. And it provided, I think you all can see it now, correct?
Almost.
It's slowly getting there. But right,
Yeah, I
is a
apologize for my internet
There you
connectivity.
go.
Yeah.
You're up.
All right, perfect. So here it shows here, as mentioned before, the agenda. We have some opening remarks, giving some bullet points on ways in which we can direct the meeting coordination, and everything is good. Me personally, I always like giving a second prompt because once again, I'm always in the business of distrust and verify. So I want to make sure it's everything that I got and within the context of the meeting. So, hey, now I want you to add a section under each agenda item for notes that can be filled during the meeting. Format it so that it's ready to print. And then now you see that it gave a clean outlook of what the actual agenda could be. You could print this out, give these to members of the committee. As we going through it, everybody can write down their notes, whether you want to collect them or not, that's up to you. But now you have a clean, concise.
Sorry, Brother Smith, I accidentally muted you.
No, you're all good. You're all good. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you was like clear, concise. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, perfect. No, you're all good. You're all good. So yeah, essentially it gives you a clear, concise format of how the agenda will be set up. I even have it set to time, so it gives you like a time frame. Hey, I don't want to go past 7 minutes per this edition or so on and so on. And as you can see, it gives a clean outlook for each individual item. And it once again, this is something that we can impact on each level of the fraternity business, right? So we can do this for chapter. Well, I wouldn't per se do it for chapter meetings where you have large chapters, but smaller chapters, especially undergrad chapters, this would definitely benefit. You can have more notes. Everybody has an input and say into things. And just another clean way to automate and concise and use AI within our day-to-day business. I'm gonna now stop sharing this screen and I'm gonna go back to the other screen. Okay, perfect. Everybody should be here with me.
We getting
Can
there.
everybody hear me?
There you go.
Okay.
We're live.
Perfect. So yeah, so that's essentially the presentation and the demonstration that I would like to provide. I do want brothers to take some time, whether it is screenshot this or write it down if you've been taking notes. I want everybody to, if they can, get the opportunity to also use this same format or formula to do an actual task. And once again, if you are using a paid version, please make sure sensitive information is redacted. If you're like me, I have a paid version for almost all these AI tools. Feel free to hack it or go at it as you can. I'll give it a few minutes, but if not, we can also kind of lead this with a little bit of questions. If there are questions, we can kind of discuss those because I know we're towards the end of the presentation.
Do you want a question?
Good evening, everyone. So I'll get to a little bit about me in a moment. First of all, thank you all for spending your time with me this evening. You can be doing a lot of other things, but thank you for your engagement in advance. It is a humble privilege to present to my fraternity brothers, not something that I take for granted. The purpose of this is to be It is to be informative in the sense that hopefully you can take things that you can learn and adapt. It's also to be prescriptive, so that gives you specific tasks that you can actually do at the end of this. But it's not meant to be authoritative. What does that mean? That means it's not gospel. That means it's not the only way to do things, or it's the official recommended. You can't do this any other way, right? There's more than one way to achieve sort of the same results. This is the path of experimentation that I've gone down and the path of work that I've gone down, right? And sort of perfected and operationalized within my own chapter. And I just want to share that with the rest of the brotherhood, especially those of you who fill the role of chapter secretary. So again, we'll hold questions to the end. And with that in mind, we will begin. This story is really not really about me, but I do have to tell you a little bit about me. And I know at least one of my old head chapter brothers from undergrad is on here. So my name is Mark Cornelius. I was born and raised in New York City. I am a third generation son of Harlem. I live in the Bronx, New York. I am a charter member of Tau Chi Sigma chapter, the Bronx Sigmas, a member of the Eastern region. I was initiated at the University of Oklahoma. Yes, I went from all the way out here to all the way out there. In the spring of 1995, Friday, May 5th, 1995 to be exact. And I'm alumnus of the University of Oklahoma and some other places too. But when I was initiated into the fraternity, I had a lot of zeal and energy, and I thought I wanted to herald and defend. I wanted to be A.M. Walker. We all know the quote, right? I said, I want to be president of the chapter. I want to do all this stuff. Well, the big brothers had other ideas in mind, right? They said, no, we think you would make a better secretary. Well, it turns out the big brothers were right, right? It turns out that I was pretty good at the role. Not only did I have like a desktop computer and a scanner, and believe me, back in 1996, that was gold, right? Everybody didn't have that. And I had high-speed internet access and desktop publishing software and all the stuff that you needed to make nice agendas and minutes and chapter reports. And guess what? We won chapter report of the year that next year in Pond Bluff, Arkansas. We won that very next year, right? So clearly I must have had some talent that they saw that I didn't see. Well, fast forward to 2026. My chapter is 4 years old. It's time for me to step up and take a leadership role in the chapter. I don't want to be president, and I don't think they want me to be president, which is cool. But I'm kind of good at the secretary thing, right? I kind of know a few tools and a few tricks. I also do a lot of meetings, right? So I understand what it means to capture meetings and all the other stuff. So I said, let me take, what I learned and apply it to this role. So here I am. So with that in mind, we don't need to talk about me anymore. Let's actually talk about the role. Like, what do we do as chapter secretaries? We're always obviously taking the meetings, right? We're the recording secretary. We record. So we make sure that the meetings are recorded and presented to the chapter. We make sure that we compile all the other reports from all our chapter officers, right? We heard all of the cats in the chapter. We also make sure the annual reporting is done for the chapter, right? It's our job, our responsibility to make sure that the annual chapter report is done. This sounds like a whole lot, but all of these things, or most of these things, are things that AI tools are very much suited for. And I'm going to show you that in the next few minutes as we go along. So, how did I get to the point of applying AI? So a little bit more about me. I promise I won't make this about me much, but I work in sales, right? So I work in software sales. We meet with clients. We have complex meetings and demos, and a lot of the nuance gets captured in that conversations that happen in the meeting. And when someone is writing things down, they don't always catch those things, right? They don't always hear everything, or they don't always remember it, or they don't always capture it exactly the same way it was said. And we've discovered over the years, not only do the online meeting tools have the ability to transcribe, there are also devices and other tools that we can use for in-person meetings where we can capture all of those things, right? And make sure that that data is not lost. And not only that, we can make sure that once we have that data captured, we can put it someplace where we can use that data and get some kind of meaningful insight from it. So I took that same thing that we were doing at work, and I said, how can I apply that to my chapter here at Phi Beta Sigma, right? How can I take, because we do the same thing. We have meetings, right? We have chapter meetings, we have exec board meetings, we have committee meetings, we have these discussions, things are supposed to be captured. So we capture those things and we send out minutes, right? But what happens after that? People want to know, well, what happened in the meeting? And now they got to go back to their email or this, that, and the other and try to figure out what happened. Well, we have tools for that too, repositories where we can put documents and then do search, right? So we can find out what actually happened. So my stack, right? Again, I told you this is not meant to be authoritative, but informative and prescriptive. How do I do it? This is my stack. It's about capturing, generating, and remembering. So three things, right? We got three founders. We want to make everything about three. Capture, that is, we want to record the actual data at the moment it's happening. We want to capture the meeting. How do I do that? I use a device called Applaud. Many of my sales reps use Plaud. That's where I learned about it. Plaud, Plaud. That's the device I use. Are there other ways to do this? Absolutely. We'll cover that in a minute. Then we use an AI tool to generate. I prefer Claude. It's just coincidentally that they rhyme. There are other tools, GPT, Copilot, etc. We'll talk about that. Claude is where I actually do the work of taking the raw data, right, and transforming it into some meaningful outputs. And then the last part is remember. Once we have the outputs, what do we do with them? We put them somewhere where not only can they be stored securely, right, we can control the access to them, but we also have the ability to gain some data, some more meaningful insights, and we can do other things with them once we have them in there. We can ask questions, we can see trends, we can do other things like that, right? So this is our stack. Basically our three things we need to do. We need to capture, that is, make sure we are actually taking in the data as it's happening in the meetings. Generate, that is, produce meaningful output in the form of perhaps documents or other things from that actual captured data. And then remember, put that captured data output someplace where we can get meaningful insight from it. So how do we do capture? Claude is a device. I'm not sure if everybody can see. I'm going to hold mine up. If I hold it the right way, you can see mine looks like this. It also has an application. This little device can magnet to the back of the phone. I simply press the button. I put it at the dais or in front of Brother President. And for those of you wondering, yes, we announced to the room, brothers, we're about to start the meeting. The meeting is being recorded, right? So everybody in the room all knows, and we also open the Zoom bridge, right? So we have brothers that attend remotely. Everybody knows, just like right now, the meeting is being recorded, right? So we're all amenable to the fact that the meeting is being recorded. So the device is capturing. How good is the capture on this device? So in a really nice, clear room, nice big room, clear audio, this is going to get you about 80 to 90% of the actual audio. Where is it going to be weak? A lot of times people's names, right? Proper nouns is the place where it's going to be weak. Or context specific terms like Greek letters is another one that it struggles with, right? It doesn't do Greek letters very well. So for example, we might partner with a Zeta chapter and we might use their abbreviated name instead of the actual full chapter name. So like we may say Kez, right? So it's just going to capture that as a word. It doesn't know what that actually means. So later on, we have a quality step when we take that transcript. When we get to the Claude part, we'll show you where we actually watch that transcript and say, okay, now you enrich it with the context that you already have. You know these people's names, you know how to correct the spelling, all the other stuff. We'll get to that later. But what's most important about this is that we captured everything everybody said, right? We may take notes in the meeting. Yes, we should take notes for our own like clarity and context about things, but we have word for word everything that was actually said in the meeting. That's the key thing. We don't have to trust our memory, right? And with that, we have the starting point for all the data that we need going forward. The next thing is the generate step. So now we use a tool and we use these things called skills to make it repeatable so that we can generate meaningful output. So for example, I will take the raw Claude transcript and I'll say, wash it against what you know about the chapter, right? So it'll make corrections. And I'll take officer reports, for example, before a meeting, all the officers send me reports. And I have another skill that will generate a chapter digest. What's that? Everything you need to know before the meeting, right? So, but we don't have to spend that much time in the meeting covering stuff if you read all of the stuff in the digest. And we have another thing, the chapter report, right? So we can take all the stuff we've done throughout the year. We can wash that through the CSAP, through the chapter reporting process. We can create the chapter report according to the awards and standards like it's supposed to. All of these things are possible to do because all of these types of output are structured output. That is exactly what artificial intelligence or AI is designed to do. is designed to do things that are structured, right, that are formatted, that are standardized. So once we have, right, a repeatable process, we create a thing called a skill, or in Gemini, they're called gems. They're called other things, but the same thing is it's basically a set of instructions so that you don't have to give it the same long form prompt every time, right? So what does that actually look like, right? It's cool to say that in a slide. Let me actually show this and make it real for you. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna turn the presentation off for a second. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you Claude Desktop. And I'm gonna show you what I actually did a few days ago for our May chapter meeting, right? I'm gonna show you parts of that, and then I'm gonna show you an example output. I'm not gonna show you our real meeting minutes because I would be a bad secretary if I did that, but I'll show you what they would look like, right? So what did I do? I actually went to the Claude website because I have to actually download the transcripts first, so they have a website. This is where the device uploads all the files. So all the files, my chapter meeting was here. I downloaded the transcript. Notice it didn't spell the chapter's name right? So we can't rely on the device to be 100% accurate, but that's okay. We download that transcript. And what was the first thing that Claude noticed, right? It said, got it, Tau Chi Sigma. Why? Because it already has context. I've trained it on certain things. It knows our chapter name. It knows where the Bronx Sigma is. For example, our chapter president, Brother Robinson, or our chapter vice president, they use nicknames, right? They're Stro and they're Shy. It knows who they are. This is our president. This is his name. He goes by this. All of those things. So when we speak informally, it already knows how to clean that up. So you can see when I go through this, I think it made about 100 and something corrections to the transcript before it was finished. So I got a corrected transcript, right? With 100 and something corrections from the raw transcript. So I didn't just take the raw transcript. You could if you wanted to, but you will get bad output if you use bad input, right? So the first thing I wanted to do was make sure that we validate the transcript. So now, right, we've got the transcript. We've made sure all the speaker names are correct. We identified all the speakers. And from there, we can say generate minutes. So I have a skill that generates minutes. What is an actual skill? I'll show you what a skill actually looks like. You can actually go in here and create. And how do you create skills? You literally prompt it to say, hey, Claude, I want to create a skill to do something. And you have a conversation with it. And a series of conversations back and forth, it creates this skill. So it says, okay, what inputs am I expecting? I'm expecting a transcript. What context do I need? These are certain people's names. Like I uploaded a chapter roster with the PII removed, other than names, member numbers, etc. So it can match people's names and spell them correctly, right? So it knows who they are. I gave it my officer list, so it knows who the officers of the chapter are, right? I explained to it a little bit about Phi Beta Sigma. What are our programs, right? What is my chapter? How does this work? Structure. So it has a basic working knowledge. These are the Zeta chapters we partner with, et cetera, et cetera. So when it hears certain things over and over and over again, right, it will know. And somewhere in here, all of the context that it captured is there. The other thing I gave it is our actual Phi Beta Sigma brand standard, which you can find on the Blueprint member portal in the documents section, right? You can download that. It's a nice PDF. What does that tell you? Our approved typography, our approved fonts, right? Our approved colors, all those things are there. So I can train it on how to do all of those things so that it will produce output that is visually consistent with our brand standards. Right? All of this stuff is just tech. I can also take the other great thing about a skill file is I can take this skill file and I can send it to someone else. And they could take the same skill file and put it in Claude, or they could literally put the same text in GBT or another one, and they could create its version of the same thing. And it would produce with the same inputs, the exact same output every single time. So what does that output look like? It could be a Word document, for example, like this. So this is the June 26th, which obviously hasn't happened yet, chapter meeting. So I had to generate a fictional one, but this is what the meeting minutes Word doc looks like, right? It tells me everything about the meeting, who was there, spells everybody's name correctly, right? The president gave his report. It tells you every motion who was made, who moved, who seconded. All these things are here, right? Nice Word doc. I can email out to the chapter or however you want to distribute that. Or the great thing about AI is I'm not limited to the output format, right? If I want to be say more creative, I want to be something more visionary, I could do something like this. And I can generate it as web. We can have our own intranet, and I can generate it as brand consistent HTML. Same exact format, same document, right? But now it's just formatted as HTML. We could deploy it on the web and an intranet, password protect, whatever. The point is, there's no real limit to the way you can do the output. All I had to do was tell it, this is the branding standards that we want. That's why the fonts, colors, the typography, all that stuff is exactly the way it's supposed to be. It will do all the rest for you. Zero design skills needed to do it, right? So really the limit is your creativity of how you want to do it. That is an example of a skill. So every one of these that we implement, for example, I have a skill that does meeting minutes. That's the one I showed you. I have another skill that generates the chapter digest, and I have another skill to build chapter reports. And all I do, right, is invoke the skill literally by saying, hey, Claude, build my Tau Chi Sigma meeting minutes for the month of May. Feed it the transcripts, and it knows what to do. Right? That's the point of skill, so that you don't have to really master getting the prompts right every single time. Once you get your prompt exactly the way you want it, you save it as a skill. Now it has a memory of that prompt that you can use it over and over and over again. And when you need to change the skill, you can just say, I want to edit my skill, right? If let's say we release a new version of the brand standard, upload this new version of the brand standards, make the changes to my skill so that it's compliant. And it'll go in, it'll make all the changes, update colors, you're done. So stole a little of my own thunder for this slide. And showed you a little bit about what it looks like. In 1995, these predators were reintroduced to the Uh-oh. Now the last part is the memory. So now that we've got these documents, what are we actually going to do with them, right? It's cool that you can generate all these documents, you can send all this stuff out, but they kind of get lost, right? Or people may not read them in time or this, that, and the other. And then at the end of the year, you're scrambling to do your chapter report. You don't got to go through your email. That's the experience I had last year when I was putting together a chapter report. And I realized, you know what? There's a tool for this, and it's called Notebook LM. Notebook LM is one tool. It's used, it's by the Google platform. So a lot of chapters are already using Google Drive. Notebook LM is a part of the Google suite. And what it lets you do is actually upload documents into it as sources, right? Those documents become sources. And now it becomes its own sort of mini AI model only on the sources that you gave it, right? It costs $0, right? If you have a Gmail account, you can use it. If your chapter has a Google account already, your chapter can set that up. And if your chapter uses Notebook LM, that means only the people in your chapter's Google accounts can access that LM, right? So, for example, we at Phi Beta Sigma headquarters, we have Google as our intranet provider. If we use Notebook LM internally, only internal people can access that, right? So you can limit access in that way. Or if you use your general Gmail account, don't advise that. You can only share and designate who you give access to, right? So you control the access. It will not train any other models on that data. You don't have to worry about that data being shared with this, that, and the third. But let me show you better than I can tell you what that looks like. So we'll again pause the presentation. I'll go to Notebook LM. And so I create a notebook like this. And essentially all I do is I add sources. Every time I create a new document, I add a source, I literally drag it and drop it in here. And now I have all the things that we've done captured in a learning model that I can ask it questions. And the other things that I can add to this are stuff like the CSAP, or that's going to change to the chapter audit, or the actual chapter report format, the brand standards, again, all those things. So I can say, hey, Notebook LM, give me the outline of my chapter report. And guess what it will do, right? If we upload all our PIAs, if we upload all our meeting minutes, we upload all those things in here, right? Just the report of our PIAs, by the way, we don't need all the individual ones. Just the report that's in your chapter portal that lists all your PIAs, you will get all the outline of your chapter report already formatted according to all the program standards, bigger, better business, education, social action. Why? Because you trained it on the exact strike criteria that we gave you from headquarters. What is the benefit of that? Your chapter reporting becomes consistent. Does that mean you can't be creative and do all kinds of cool stuff? No, it doesn't mean that. Like, you have your ability to be creative and how you want to message things, but you will always have the correct data. You will make sure that your chapter report is consistent with the data that is being asked for to be reported by the chapter. That's the benefit to you. And the other benefit to you is that you're going to save yourself untold amounts of time, right, compiling data, because now you already have it in one place. Example, I created a notebook for my last year's chapter report. This is literally how I solved this problem. I got all the data, I put it in Notebook LM. With our previous chapter report, I checked the CSAF, everything we needed, and I used this to generate the outline of the chapter report. So the idea behind these tools, right, is making things easy. As a matter of fact, you could use Notebook LM and not use any of the other AI tools, right? You could build your own meeting minutes manually, all your other outputs manually, put them in Notebook LM, and still get the benefit of this, right? So you don't have to use any one piece of this technology altogether. You can kind of pick and choose what works for you. If Claude doesn't work for you, doing it that way, that's fine. There are other ways to do it. Or you don't want to record, you want to manually capture it, that's fine. You can still use the notebook to capture your outputs. My point is, this is designed to be flexible and work with what works for you as a chapter. So what does that mean? Like before, right? You have to handwrite everything. You're chasing down your reports. Every document, you have to format it over and over and over again, or create your own templates, right? You already know what it means for your chapter reports. I don't have to tell you what that means. And every time your officers change, all that data gets lost. But if you have it in notebooks, right, you survive those officer transitions. When people change roles, especially for collegiates, if collegiates are on the call, because your roles are going to change probably every single year, right? Or alumni. If you don't want to be in the secretary chair forever, you want to make this so that you can hand it over to the next person, right? And the same quality of output that you were producing, they can reduce or even improve upon it. That's what you want, because you don't want it to say, oh man, everything was great when he was in the chair and then the next person came in and it all went to crap. No, you want to hand them a set of skills. Hey man, this is how I do things. If you want to make it better, this is how you make it better, right? Or at least you take it in, this is what we did, and you run with it. You can train the other chapter officers. This is our notebook, right? So we don't have to keep chasing each other down. What happened at the chapter meeting? Just go ask the notebook. What's my follow-up items? Go ask the notebook. You see what I'm saying? Like, hopefully the benefit of that lands for folks pretty straightforward. So remember, this is not a one-size-fits-all thing. Because as I said, alumni chapters, we tend to have budget, right? We tend to have more stable members. We tend to do multi-year terms, et cetera. Collegiates, they tend to be more transient, right? And they also don't have the amount of time to put into this. They got coursework, exams. I mean, some of us as alumni do, but they also don't have the money that we as alumni chapters do, right? So we want to have ways to do this that are flexible for different types of budgets. So that's something else I kind of thought of. Okay, this is my way of doing it, but what are other ways to do it that are at different cost levels? So can this be done for free? Yes, it can. Right, so chapters can do this for absolutely free. Or you can do it sort of at an enhanced level, or you can do like the whole full-blown stack. And full transparency to you, like my job pays for my Claude license, right? So obviously I have more flexibility in tokens to do a lot of things. But even at the free level, you can do things if you're smart about how you use it. So for example, if you use a ChatGPT or a Claude, you don't have to use the most powerful model they have to do this kind of work. As a matter of fact, you can use like the lightest model they have to do most of this kind of work and save a ton of tokens. So you don't have to spend a whole lot of money to do this. This is not CPU intensive work. It's not rocket science. It's document capture and transformation. So the lowest use models will work very, very well with this. So you can save your token budget and your money budget, right, by not blowing them out using the most powerful models they have to do this stuff. So if you want to start free, You can start free with Claude, with GPT, with Gemini. You can record meetings on your phone, your iPhone or Android. They all have apps to do this. And every one of the AI tools has a free tier, and Notebook LM has a free tier for every person with a Gmail account. It's just that your notebooks for free tier is limited to 50 sources. So after 50 sources, you can't add any more sources. If you have a paid Google account, you get more sources than that. A little bit more across the board. I just did a little bit of comparison with Claude, GPT, Gemini, and Copilot. There are other models. The same stuff will work. Also, collegiates, you might want to check for student discounts or alumni if you're in a master's program or PhD program. Some of you are. There are student discounts for some of this stuff, so you can save money. Some of your schools may even be paying for licenses already that you can use, right? Nothing prevents you from doing any of that. None of this is unsafe activity that you couldn't use those licenses if you wanted to. And again, the same concept of skills, they work the same across GPT, Gemini, and Copilot. They call them something else in those technologies, but they are essentially the same thing. So the document generation is based on my experience. I do find that Claude has the most richest document generation for me. But that's because I use the tool in the desktop. If, for example, you are a Microsoft user, Copilot can generate some really cool stuff in the Microsoft stack, but it's all about your preference. I'm not telling you use Claude or you're doing it bad. It's really about what works for you. Same thing with the transcription. There are different price points for this as well. So you can, again, do it on your phone for free. You can get other devices, Otter.ai, which is software. I think some of you in here might be using that right now. Amiibo Note Plus is another device. I use the Plod Note Pro. There's a Plod Note and a Note Pro. They are different. There's different feature sets and price points in the Plod. It's really about what may work for you or what not. I also use it for work. So I have the Plod Note Pro. I get 1,200 recording minutes a month. I may get down to like 200 at the end of a month. So I don't use all the 1,200. I don't need the unlimited plan. That works for me, using it for both fraternity business, using it at work, or other things I might be working on that I want to capture. I find that 1,200 minutes is plenty. With that, we're going to think about what are the things that are next, and then we will have some time for questions and answers so that we can make sure no one misses a dribble of the Western Conference Finals. But we'll just kind of wrap it up a little bit. We'll talk about some of the other things that you can do with AI. So you can actually take what we've started here and you can go way further with it. So you can use AI to actually generate your notices. So if people haven't submitted their reports on time, for example, you can use AI to generate reminders to gently nudge, big brother so-and-so to get his report in. Or you can actually use it to build contact lists, right? You can actually use it to figure out who you need to reach out to in your chapter. There's a bunch of different ways you can do that just based on the reports that you have in the chapter portal. So for example, you have a financial member roster and you have a chapter dues paid roster. That lets you tell who you need to follow up with, right? Who's paid chapter dues and who hasn't. These are the people I need to follow up with. Or for example, who's completed our MIP certification and who hasn't, right? We need to follow up with the following brothers for the MIP certification because we know we want to do the 7C in the fall, right? All of those things that are reported on in the blueprint that you can download and ingest into AI are things that you can use, right? And I do some of these as well as other reports that you can use, right, to create action in your chapter. Or even there's a report in your chapter portal of who hasn't signed up for Blueprint. You can use that. You reach out to people. Hey, man, I need you to sign up for Blueprint. Or, hey, I need you to do risk management training or MIP certification, right? You'll know who you need to reach out to. You know who's financial. You know who's done it, right? And you can create all of the outreach that you need for every one of those action items. And it's like the limit is really your imagination. Right? These are just things that I've come up with based on the work that I've done. But you can take some of that. For example, if you're interested, like I can share with you a skill file and show you a little bit about how it's done, right? You can play with them, let your imagination run free, and see how it works for you, right? And maybe you might even come up with something better than I came up with. And that's really the idea, right? I don't want us to stop with, hey, Brother Canales came up with this. This is cool. Let's all do this. No, maybe there's a better way. If we can improve upon it, if we can make it more efficient, more cost effective, especially for the collegiate brothers, we want to do that. But the idea behind this is that we don't want to make our job as the recording secretary harder than it has to be. You can capture your meetings, you can compile all your reports, you can make sure you maintain their intelligence and generate all your annual reporting, right? That's hopefully where what you guys took from this. And so how do you guys get started? Really, you just begin. I know I actually had this conversation with someone earlier. They say, oh, I don't know how to use AI. You just begin. Like you download one of these tools. Like for example, ChatGPT has a desktop tool called Codex, or Claude has called Desktop, and you open it up and you ask it, how do I do this? You start with some real pain point you're trying to solve and just ask it, how do I do this? And it'll start having a conversation with you, right? And just keep feeding the conversation. And it'll walk you through step by step what you need to do. So if you don't know how to use a tool, it'll tell you, well, how do I do this tool? And that's what I do sometimes. Like if I don't know how to do a particular technology and I get stuck, I try it out. And when I get stuck, I might screenshot it and say, hey, Claude, I'm stuck here. What do I do? It'll reference documentation, tell me, oh, you need to set this or blah, blah, blah. Cool. And before you know it, I've mastered some new tech with the help of Claude, right? Claude didn't do the work for me. I just needed it for help where I got stuck. You can do the same thing. You don't have to be an AI master. You don't have to be a programmer, a database expert, a web designer. You don't have to be anything tech to do this. You just have to be able to ask questions. Remember, there's no real such a thing as artificial intelligence. All the intelligence is in your questions. You asking the questions, you driving the prompts, that's where all the insight comes from. So just start with something. Just take something and start and keep going. When you get stuck, keep going. And when you win, right, when you get something that works, don't just stop there, make it better. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not enough, right? You have to make it better, right? And then figure out how you can share it. The last part is figure out how you can share it with someone else. Because it doesn't help our wondrous band as a whole if one chapter, right, is doing all this great stuff. Because at the end of the day, kind of like the movie Drumline, is one band and one sound. That's why I'm here tonight, right, to share with you guys some of the things I'm working on. Because it's not a contest, guys. If I can make another chapter secretary's life easy, right? If I can make your life, if I can get you an hour of your week back, 2 hours, 3 hours, then hopefully you got something from this. So with that, I'm going to kind of land the plane. Thank you all for your time and attention, and we'll turn to questions. My contact information is here, technology at phi beta sigma 1914.org. That's me. Don't ask me about the blueprint that way. Send a ticket to the ticketing system like that. You can ask me anything you want about AI on the email. But with that, I also wanted to share with you that I created a question and answer sort of sheet here that I'm also going to share, right? So I came up with about 37 questions that I thought people might ask. So I'm going to share those in the chat with you.
I just dropped it.
Oh, thank you, Brother Dr. Rowe. So this covers a whole lot of questions that I think people will ask, like around cost or even around objections to recording, or how do you handle that? Or how do you use Notebook LM? Or what are the limits, right? Or what is the actual official policies around stuff? How do I get started? There's a whole bunch of different areas that I've created in this document that you can go through, right? And just ask. And it's just really simple, straightforward. There's not a whole lot to it. It's just simple, straightforward question, like how much does it cost, right? Or can I use ChatGPT instead of Claude?
Evening, brothers. It's good to see you all virtually in the room. Appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation about, artificial intelligence and, human resources, how that's changing. I promise not to be before you long. My goal here is to really arm our brothers specifically, more importantly, our collegiate brothers who are just new graduates, as an example, and are looking for a new position. And for those brothers who are just in general looking for a new position, I will say the game has changed. I would say about a year ago, we probably would not be having these conversations really, really in depth as it is now. But as you know, artificial intelligence is here, and it's here to stay. So really quickly, uh, I'll give a brief introduction about myself. And again, we're not going to make, as the previous presenters have said it before, we're not going to make this about me because it's definitely not about me. It's about disseminating the information to the brothers. I'm going to give you a brief history of the history of artificial intelligence. Then we'll talk a little bit about some of the human resources trends that I've seen over the past year or so as artificial intelligence continues to ramp up. I'll give you an example of a LinkedIn resume. I'm going to actually use my own resume and a position that I applied to kind of show you what are some techniques, what are some ways you can leverage AI as part of this. We're going to talk about some preparation techniques. And then I have some really cool tidbits at the end of, do's and don'ts as part of this process and just in general, the artificial intelligence landscape of things that I'm seeing that is impacting our communities. So with that being said, again, I'm Brother Edmund Hardy. Uh, I made my way into Sigma in the spring of 2007 by way of Gettysburg College, and I'm currently a member of the Theta Omicron Sigma chapter in Harrisburg, PA. I have a bachelor's in computer science and math. Focusing on a bunch of stuff. I know you see those words there, but pretty much, my background is I've built operating systems from scratch. I have done some artificial intelligence as well and machine learning. And then from a mathematical perspective, computational theory, that just means why do numbers function the way they do, right? And how do we get there? So I also hold a master's of information security and project management from Northeastern. And I currently work at Penn Entertainment, which is a casino company that has 40 plus casinos across the US. And we have a major digital presence. Some may have been familiar with the ESPN Bet app, which is now the Score Bet um, part of my team. So I oversee loyalty integrations, external websites, promotion engine capabilities, HR systems, and then what we call back of house systems. At least that's what they call it in the casino industry. So those systems that you don't see, which is typically your hotel and your gaming systems, which are highly regulated. So real quick, I'm not going to go bullet for bullet, but there's this notion that artificial intelligence is like something that came, within the past 5 years. I'm here to tell you that it's been around since 1846. And so it just started with basic Boolean algebra, right, which kind of laid some foundations, right, underneath that happens for artificial intelligence. Then there was a guy named Alan Turing, briefly, that kind of just talks about decision making, right, and decision trees and how you get from point A to point B and point C. Uh, then you also have what we call the Lisp language. This is the first language that actually is artificial intelligence. It's really interesting. I have a screenshot of Eliza. Eliza was actually the first conversational program that was built in this programming language, right? And so you just literally asked it a question and it gave an inference at that time in the 60s of what it thought it was, right? So we didn't have the internet back then. We didn't have data that we have today, but it had enough to kind of get started with a base, right? To be able to really respond back to you in ways in which you thought was right. So when we talk about, the hallucination aspects of artificial intelligence, it literally started at this moment. I mean, think about it again, the 60s. I mean, there's information, but we didn't have the breadth and depth of technology in the 60s that would, kind of give you what you're seeing here on the screen. So then we have this robot here. Again, not going to go into it, but it's called Shaky the Robot. This actually listened and applied artificial intelligence at an early age. And then we have this issue where artificial intelligence as a government institution like completely stopped putting any funding to it. So then you kind of get into the 80s, right? So now you're kind of talking about Windows 3.1, right? All those fascinating MS-DOS for some of my old folks that are out there who've used DOS over the years, right? That now comes into play, right? And so behind the scenes in order to do those types of systems, you had something called XCon, which really was rule-based. So we talk about rule-based, back in the early 1900s. Now it's coming into more of a tech form because the technology, right, computers are really starting to pick up a bit. Then we get into the late 80s and 90s, and again, we have what we call the second winter, right? So it just stops. It stops again. And then we get to the 1990s and 2000s and this concept of machine learning, which many may have heard or may not have heard of, but machine learning takes off, right? This is like really the start of the internet age. You really got dial-up that's taken off, right? Information is now readily available, right? And so the reason why this occurred is truly because again, hardware is now available. We're now increasing in our memory. And so there's more computational power to do things, right? That's available. Fast forward to the 2000s, 2010s, then there's deep learning, which inspires neural networks. Neural networks is just basically think about your brain, right? And how we think of things and how we translate what we hear, what we see, what we do, right, into actionable words or things that kind of goes into memory, right? And so when we think about neural networks, we think about Siri. We think about, and hopefully my friend back here, Alexa, doesn't light up, which she did, and you take those neural networks, and now you're really getting into some stuff. So now we get into modern AI, right? The generative models, the models that think just like you to a degree, right? They take form from large language models. And in general, a large language model is just a basis of just letters. Underneath that, bits and bytes, right? That really transforms when you type in a question or when you're asking something, it's looking behind the scenes to say, what is the most frequently visited acts thing that you can think of, right? And it continues to learn over time. As you continue to feed it, you continue to feed the large language model. So now we come from this era, right, in which you see all the different types of artificial intelligence applications that you can use. And so now we go from a shift of understanding AI, right? We know it's here, but now we're at a point where we're trying to protect our natural resources, our authenticity. I can't tell you how many times I think I just said this on social media. I'm so sick of seeing the AI flyers, right? The AI flyers look the same, right? So there's no authenticity to the things now that people are putting out sometimes. You have AI in jobs which will cover. You even have some, companies that are not companies that are using artificial intelligence to post themselves on LinkedIn, and trying to gain people's information from a cybersecurity perspective. Ethics. This is a topic that I can't stress. We talk about it at work today, right? The amount of data that you'll see, and I'll get to show you this, the amount of data that's out there just from the public, right? Just using Chat GPT or your public Copilot or Claude, whatever your favorite one is, it's very, very interesting how it finds information about you. Information that you didn't think was out there is definitely out there. So these are the types of things that we're thinking about now when it comes to AI. So what are some of those trends? And I will share with you all that not only do I do the human resource aspect from a professional perspective, from a tech perspective, but I also help out a lot of nonprofits who are not able to maybe staff due to funding, right? And so they're now trying to get into AI in ways in which, from a nonprofit perspective, they can leverage those tools to propel themselves forward or to maybe even get additional resources, right? And so again, I would say the landscape for careers within the past 5 years have drastically changed. And within the past year, if you're looking at job postings that are on LinkedIn, the first thing they want to know is, have you interacted with artificial intelligence? What have you done with artificial intelligence? No longer are the days of, I'm not going to use it. You're going to have to adopt it some way, somehow. Again, for those who are currently working, right? Teams, this Zoom call probably has AI, right? AI is embedded in everything that we do now. I can't tell you the last time I took meeting minutes. I know we talked about, the secretary, but just even from a professional perspective, right? I can't tell you the last time I took minutes because I'm able to have AI write those minutes, kind of send me a synopsis, right? And kind of work through those details. Again, you got to readapt. This is the time, brothers, where in which if you're looking for a shift, if you're looking for a change, the change is going to be you're going to make a change, but you're going to make a change alongside AI. And I want people to understand that what we're seeing now in corporate America, right? We're seeing these low level, and I say lower level complexity jobs. I'm talking about, we'll use an example as the state, clerks, right? Those clerk one or clerk two positions, right? As an example, I've seen this at the state levels. They're being replaced, right, by artificial intelligence. But what I'm here to tell you is that artificial intelligence does not replace the work you do and how you do it. It's how you adapt, right, and work with it to propel your next career. You need to think about artificial intelligence in a way in which you change the way you work. So those repetitive tasks, those things that you normally do, right? As an example, you transform that, let AI take care of it, and then you focus on the things that AI cannot do, right? So for example, I have agents that I've built at work that will tell me across the landscape of the company how many people are actually clocked in, right, through Teams, because we're somewhat virtual. How many people have clocked in using an actual physical wall clock at the properties, right? Where have they visited, right? So I want to know what our employees are doing at any given moment at any time, not specifically one person, but just in general, what are some of our employees doing? And that provides me a report every 3 hours for different shifts, right? Before I used to have to go pull reports, kind of take a look myself, but now I don't have to do that. I can focus on
Yeah.
other engineering tasks, right? That's before me, other cool things that I want to work on, right? Without having to build somebody a report or build out new code, right? That's specific to that thing. So again, some horrible mistakes, right? We may have a couple folks on the call, so beat me down later. Amazon is the number one, besides a couple. I know I saw my brother on here. We won't talk about Microsoft because he works for Microsoft, but Amazon is one of those places where they did a big snafu. It wasn't public, but I don't know if you remember, I would say a couple months ago, there was a big outage that affected a lot of people, a lot of online retailers, a lot of businesses. That happened because Amazon had laid off a bunch of folks who were doing some of the work, some of that core foundational work that Amazon has to provide technology services, and AI went rogue and dismantled it. So what happened? They ended up bringing some people back. Another one that comes to mind is United Healthcare. I think we've seen on the news about the executive that was the CEO for United Healthcare, who ended up, you know, not making it. Part of that was because of AI, right? You're submitting claims, you're trying to get health benefits, but a system is saying that you can't get the benefits because you didn't meet the requirements, not understanding the human aspect, right, of that specific claim that you've put in, right? And so I know for sure, because I know some people that were in United Healthcare, there have been changes that have been made, right? Some people are coming back to the office that may have
Yeah.
been laid off from artificial intelligence. So I just wanted to kind of horn in on that and keep this in front of you to say that this is important, right? So don't think that artificial intelligence is replacing you. You just have to learn how to work with it and then maximize your capabilities so that way you can focus on other things. So let me tell you how the human resource recruitment is working now. So again, we have a lot of talent management acquisition folks. I'm sure there's someone on the call this evening who can probably attest to this. But typically, the talent acquisition, processes, they're really going through LinkedIn. They're going through a lot of different places, Dice.com, you name it, right, to find resumes and get those resumes. As an engineering leader, right, when I'm hiring for a position, there are times I'm getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of resumes. There's no way that I can necessarily read hundreds and hundreds of resumes, right? But I do my best to make sure that I at least respond to the ones that I think are important, right? The ones that I think may not have met the requirements because I think it is very important in HR or any person that's hiring to make sure that you respond back to the person, right, that took the time to fill out the application. So I do that. Now I will trash the ones that look like AI or it looks like it's just, complete garbage, but for the most part, I take that very seriously. And so initial screenings are now happening, and I'll talk about my initial screening for the company I applied to um, through AI. I actually submitted my resume for a position, and long and behold, I got an email from an AI person that said that they'd like to schedule an interview with me and that they were an artificial intelligence person. Please pick the time, right, which will cover like you want to do your interview. And right away, the time, right, it was times all the way up until 2 a.m., 3 a.m., right? I'm like, so this is not a physical person that's going to join the call with me, right? And so HireVue, Sapir, BrightHire, these are some of the ones that are popping up in the industry where they're offering these AI interviews. Now, they went and found information about me specifically. And when I got on the AI call, I actually was talking to someone that looked like me, that could interact with me, that sat in an office just the same way we are with a background screen. And then let me know right away that, that they were an AI person. And that if I continue to move or do things in view, they would record that and kind of put down that they consider that cheating, if you will. And so behind the scenes, you're being asked questions, right? And some of the bullet points you see here, right? Choose the time that works best for you. Do not pick 4 a.m. if you're not ready to go at 4 a.m. Do not pick 12 midnight on a Friday, right? They give you every option that you can to select the time. Pick the time that's more comfortable for you. Also, make sure you come prepared, right, to ask questions about the position in the company. What's interesting about artificial intelligence is I gave it my resume, right? The resume that I submitted was what I submitted. But I got a question that was so interesting. And I wrote it down because I thought it was amazing. How did my role as international chief of staff under Chris Ray, right, influence my decision in wanting to apply for the director of software engineering role and software engineering leadership role? And how did that play in to my leadership capabilities? In the back of my mind, I'm going, what does this have to do with being the software engineering director, right? But then I thought about it, you do have capable skills, right, from the fraternity. But again, that's not something that I particularly listed on my resume. that's something that an AI bot prior to the interview went and got from the internet to use about me. Now, again, I always tell people be careful, which we'll cover soon, what you put into it, right? Projects. Somehow or another, it asked me about a sensitive project that I had worked on many years ago at Gettysburg College, right? That information wasn't public, but somehow or another, the topic, the research that I had done that's not publicly accessible somehow ended up in the hands of AI. So I had to answer questions around it. But again, I kind of just told AI that I would prefer not to answer the question and that it was a sensitive topic and it kind of moved on, right? And so be careful about some of those things. And like I said here, prepare to bring no notes. Don't bring not near piece of paper, right? It's almost as if you're taking an electronic exam from your home. They're watching your surroundings, and you won't be able to even put on a background, if you will. They want to see the room that you're in, and how you're talking. So I'm going to quickly switch to a resume demonstration that I did with my resume, and kind of go through some things. And this is an actual live example of a position that I did apply for. So I'm going to come out this presentation for a second here. Now, again, folks, you can use whatever you like. I happen to use a plethora of different types of you know, AI tools. I particularly like Microsoft Copilot and Claude Code. I use Claude Code as an example to help me with my engineering activities and planning. I particularly like Copilot for a couple different reasons. This particular version of Copilot, I have my own Microsoft 365 tenant, right? So I'm able to scope what I'd like it to scope. So it's just like you're at Word, right? So this is a similar setup. I decided that I wanted to boost up my resume, right? And so I prompted it by saying, hey, I'm looking at a position, right, that's online. Can you take the link and describe how my resume matches the position? And you can see Copilot quickly came back and said, I'd be happy to compare your resume to this position. And so it told me what it needed, right? So it needed the link and it needed the resume. And so I gave the link, which is an actual position I applied to. And it automatically said, let me pull it up right away. So basically what this is doing is this is just like a bot that's going to scan the site, pull the information back, and then, kind of digest it. But notice how it said, now I have a good understanding of your professional background from our previous conversations, right? Now, let me just say, I didn't have a conversation. So that hallucination piece again with AI, I never had a conversation with this particular AI, right, about my experience. However, we do know that behind the scenes, LinkedIn is Microsoft, right? But it said it automatically knew that I had 15 years of technology leadership and software engineering management, but again, didn't have my resume yet. So please upload that resume, and it gave me two options, either Word or PDF. So you can see here, it actually gave the role overview, right, from its source. And I think that's very important. When we talk about artificial intelligence, we want to double check the source, right? Is it the source that I asked it for? Is it pulling the right and relevant information? Artificial intelligence is going to do its best job, but it will do its even better job if you guide it, right? So you can see it even took the key responsibilities, broke it out for me, right? And then what were the required qualifications, right? And it broke it out. Here's what I see. And then it gave me some initial observations, which I thought was interesting, right? Which I already knew about myself, but I know from a human aspect, I'm definitely qualified for the role. So you'll see again that 15 years of technology leadership, right? Areas to verify and highlight on your resume. Python proficiency. I know that I'm proficient in Python as an example, but I didn't list it the way that I should have. talking about my hands-on cloud experience, right? Um, I've had distributed team leadership, right? I've led onshore and offshore teams. Um, AI assisted development tools, right? And then this portion of healthcare farmer domain experience, right? Which I knew I didn't have a ton of healthcare experience, but there are ways, of course, when you're interviewing to tell your story. So here's the analysis, right? So it went against the job requirement and then my resume evidence, right? So again, there's that hallucination again. It says that I have 15 years of experience, but the requirement, right, um, is 15 years. So that hallucination, you thought you talked to me, right? But you really weren't talking.
Yeah.
Hands-on coding, right? It picked out keywords from my resume that highlighted, right, how I had hands-on coding plus management. All right, so you can see here the cloud and enterprise pieces, right? All the tech stuff, right? I think this is very important because you have got to make sure that you have some sort of AI in your resume, right? AI assisted development tools, right? In this particular instance for engineering position, AI assisted development tools is the thing, right? If you are not using AI as an engineer or as a developer, it's kind of like taboo now. You're kind of like behind, right? And so you need to start putting some of the tools that you're using and how you're using it, right? Even if it's just pulling newspaper articles, right? You do this at work, and then part of your daily task is you pull reports out of SharePoint or Teams, right? And you kind of give it a summary, right? Be prepared to talk about those things because that's what's going to make or break at this point when it comes to certain positions. So advanced education, you can see it pulled my advanced education, right? And all the other stuff that was required for the 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 position. And then I like how this told me again what my issues were, right? So for instance, the distributed teams. Your resume shows team leadership, but doesn't explicitly mention managing offshore geographically distributed teams. Right? So if you led India-based remote teams at Penn, which I have, or call that out specifically, right? Some of the security appliances, even though I had security types of things listed on my resume, I didn't specifically horn in on the pieces that the job requirement was asking me. Again, hallucination. This is just a flat out lie. Like I've used Confluence for 10 years. If for those who use Jira, Confluence is just a documentation tool, right? But it was like I have Jira listed, but I don't have Confluence, right? And typically in the engineering industry, if you're using Jira, you're definitely using Confluence or Lucidchart. Okay, so boom, key gaps to address, right? So it told me what I didn't have, right? And I'm here to tell you this is where AI cannot help you in the resume process, right? So these are my gaps, right? But when I went to do the interview, I said, you know what? I may not have some of the things listed, which again, this portion is hallucination. But using Snowflake as an example, right? How can I relate the experiences that I have to the things that Snowflake does, right? And how can I propel myself to say that even though I may not be strong suited in this area, there are ways that I can propel myself that if I am accepted for the position, right, I'm able to take that on. Healthcare pharmacy, right, domain. I have some healthcare experience, right, but not a lot. I have hospitality, which you see publishing, right? I have other different types of industries, right? But I can say that the gambling hospitality industry is somewhat similar to healthcare in how strict and from a government perspective, right? So I'm able to relate in certain ways, right? So it gives you an opportunity to prepare for the interview and really discuss how you can, pretty much prepare yourself or be that person, right? So then it gave me an overall match score, right? So it's like leadership and management, excellent. Cloud, a little flaky, right? But it put this whole thing with Snowflake, which it is a cloud too, but it's not just the cloud. Um, my technical depth was good, but because I didn't list the thing that they were looking for, it downgraded me, even though I don't consider myself a downgrade, right? AI tooling, check, 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 excellent. You see how it said excellent, right? Like it's amazing, right? Now that if you put AI on your resume, it's just excellent. You put one or two things, it's gonna say excellent, right? Uh, my domain fit and then my overall match. It thought that I was a 70% match for the position, right? And again, take it for what it's worth. So then it gave me recommendations on what to do and what not to do. And then it asked me, did it want to tailor me a resume that was specific and optimized for this position? So I said, yes, please create me a tailored version. And so it did, and it put it in in a Word document, which I'll open in a second here. But here's some of the summary and changes that it made. And again, look at the sources that it used, right? It used my personal Microsoft 365 to say, first of all, this file is listed there, right, in my Microsoft 365 tenant, but then wrote a professional summary, right? Told me what it rewrote, right? The core skills and how it restructured it, and then enhanced bullets in certain areas. Now, this is my favorite part, and I think I shared this with Brother Davis yesterday. I stayed truthful to your actual experience and did not fabricate Python or Snowflake skills. The Python gap remains the biggest risk for this application. I'd recommend, and then it gives me recommendations, right? If you have Python, put it on there. Consider adding a brief additional skill, right? Or talk about some active learning. And then again, similar to what I would do is I have other programming languages. How can I show that I can pick up a new language, right? Which it picked up very quickly, right? And so let me just open up the resume here just to kind of give you a brief overview of what that looks like. So again, if you're using the tools, right? The summary, in my opinion, in Microsoft 365 from a Copilot perspective will actually kind of mirror what was changed, right? But you can see it changed my professional summary. And again, read it. Don't just say click, download PDF, add it to LinkedIn, push it out to whoever. Actually read what it put, right? There were things that I kind of saw that didn't make sense, right, from my resume. So I changed it, right? I changed it so that way it matched the position. Now I know I started with like 3 bullets, but it added 6 other bullets, right? And then I looked at it and go, you know what? That particular portion of the experience is required for this role, right? Um, and then eventually, even though this is not the actual resume that I sent, I took some things out to kind of, mesh some things that normally would, that you would do to a resume. But this is what we can build ourselves, right? To do. I even have an agent that goes out and tells me all the different jobs, right, based off of industry, and things that are there. So definitely wanted to just highlight this. I know that the other presenters actually show Claude Code. I like to show Copilot in this instance, right, to kind of give you a different flavor, and a different perspective. So I'm gonna bring the PowerPoint back up here. So some best practices that I can give you in this time. And I'm gonna tell you the best practices that I give you now may not be the best practices for 3 months later or 6 months later, because the large language models that are behind AI are constantly changing, right? It's constantly learning because you are giving the information, right? And it's helping them to refine the process, and get ahead of the process, right? Um, Again, use AI tools, right, to search your roles. That's the one thing you could do. Use it, right? There's so many connections that I found by using the AI tool that I didn't know that I had, right? Just by LinkedIn connections, folks who work at different places, right? It will help. I know that Brother Cornelius kind of showed in the past how to write, last week on how to write a Claude code sort of agent, right? That will help you kind of pull that stuff together, right? There's HR is now coming into the fold for that. And so if you do searches online for it, You'll find some quick ones that people have put together and you can tweak it yourself, or you can ask AI, hey, I have this particular Claude code file as an example. Can you write one or help me write one that would be best suited for this, right? So take that as a best practice. Research your industry leaders, right? Understand the research, the industry leaders, what are they doing with AI, right? So that way when you're applying for the position and you're talking about the position, you can relate to the position. Leverage AI tools again to kind of compare your resume skills, just the same way I kind of showed this example. Compare, do I meet the qualifications? If you know you meet the qualifications, what do you need to do to change that, right? So that way you are the best candidate to be accepted by AI first, right? So that way you can get that initial interview and then move on to the actual hiring manager to talk. Again, tailor your resume and cover letter to highlight qualifications that match the position before submitting. That doesn't mean lie about your resume, but make sure that you're highlighting those keywords, right? AI loves the keywords, as you saw from my demonstration. If you don't highlight those keywords, then AI will not send you the interview, right? That will propel you to that particular hiring manager. Treat AI-led interviews with the same professionalism as in-person or virtual interviews. I have seen some recorded AI videos where people are just sitting in your t-shirt and sweatpants, and I'm like, that is not what this position is for, right? And so I've seen HR managers just trash it. They're not even wanting to really listen in or even see the summary, right, of what was discussed. Because again, these types of tools are recording you, and so they get to see bits and pieces, sometimes the full interview, but the pieces that matter, right, for the position. Again, take careful time in reviewing positions on LinkedIn and utilize the AI personalization tools it offers to help review company decisions, right? So sometimes you'll see, if you're a LinkedIn member, it'll give you like an AI match to say, I think you're qualified for this position. Again, use it as a tool, not the guidance that, you're not a good fit, but look to see what the position is qualifying for. And remember to check the sources, right? Copilot actually showed you the sources that it pulled from. Verify those sources and make sure that the sources that it's pulling back is factual.
Fantastic.
Some common pitfalls. Do not. Now, in this example, right, I actually put my resume into Copilot because I have it scoped so that way my information that's in there doesn't go. And I only did this for the presentation, but do not, please, 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 do not put personal information into AI. I know people who I've seen it at work, people have put their social security numbers in there, right? So I get flags when people are putting, PII information into the large language model that we have set, the scope that we have set, even at work. And why are you doing that? You should not be doing that, right? And so public use of AI, like your chat GPTs go into the website, it's not going to wipe that data for you because it wants to grab the data. So please be careful of what you put in. If you're trying to look for a job, a specific job, take out your name, take out your address, right? Generalize it in a way that it does not identify who you are, right? Just the same way AI picked up that it was me and that I had 15 years of experience, even though that was hallucination, right? It didn't have the right accurate numbers, but it had a good guess because it had specific information that it was able to grab and kind of measure against itself in the back end to say, this is it. Again, I just said it. Fact check, fact check, fact check, fact check. Artificial intelligence will lie. It doesn't have a human context, so please make sure you fact checked. This new one here, the one that I have here about social media presence, this is going for all my brothers out there. Gone are the days of, the Facebook groups that are private, you can't get to it. I actually built an AI that actually kind of surfed social media, actually authenticated, actually got into groups, pulled information, and then stored it like locally just to see how it worked. Um, and then kind of like tried to build a profile on certain people, right? So I use myself as an example, and man, it pulled up some stuff that I deleted from Facebook when I was a collegiate, drinking that blue juice or whatever, posting that picture, you know what I mean? I'm with the bros, I'm with the sores, we hanging. And some of those images came back and I thought I deleted it. We have got to be careful of what we're putting on social media because AI is now doing powered background checks. And I know this because there are quite a few state entities that are using it now to process, licensing. So, for instance, I have quite a few gaming licenses. They're using AI to pull information like that to see who you are. Again, don't enter your personal information. You entering your personal information is the worst thing that you can do into public AI. So please make sure that you're using prompts that are going to get you to the right place at the right time. It's broad enough that it doesn't identify who you are, but kind of gives you the landscape that you need to continue. And then finally, I would say never ever fabricate your experience on your resume. I think you might have seen out there these tools like Parquet AI, right, which will listen in, right? It'll read
You
what's
almost
on the
made it.
screen, right? And it'll just put
Am I
out the
frozen or is he
content.
frozen? Is anybody else good?
I think, Brother Davis, I think you're frozen.
Ah, it was me. Okay.
Yep, it was you. I can see you frozen on the right-hand side.
Gotcha. Okay.
But there are tools out there, right? AI tools that will help you pass quote unquote the interview. It's very easy, especially from a tech perspective. If I'm doing an interview, especially a coding interview, and you spit AI back to me, I'm gonna know that you used AI, right? And so be very careful not to fabricate or use tools like that, right? That will get you the position, and then once you get the position, you're not able to perform in the position. We're seeing that a lot. So I want to end the presentation on some environmental facts. Okay. I don't know if people know this or have or they're thinking about it when you use AI, right? According to MIT, energy consumption by AI data centers is 48% higher than the US national average, which means all of us combined using electricity, the data centers are using more than what we are putting out without AI. That is alarming. That is alarming, right? And I think I mentioned this on the call last week, right? A single query to an AI model uses approximately 3 gallons of water to cool server chips. So I don't know if you've seen a server chip. These server chips, these are some huge chips, man, that can power a lot. But it also takes a lot to cool them, right? And so you think about it, we've had data centers ever since we can remember, right? Since we've had the internet and we've had networks. But now you have data centers that have servers that are also powering just memory chips, right? So you can use AI. Be very careful, right? There's different types of models that you can use. I always recommend the auto function because AI will help you figure out based on your question how much complexity and how much compute it needs, right, to kind of give you an answer. And so, very, very important that we continue to understand that asking a question, right, and how insensitive it is very key. Gold and silver, I don't know if folks have seen it, but gold and silver is on the rise, right? People are trying to figure out, let me cash in my chain, right? Let me cash in my silver. Um, it's high because to make those chips, you actually need those materials. Those materials are very good with conducting electricity, and also cooling itself down. And so gold and silver are key materials, right? And making some of this stuff has reached high record prices. Even just the simple memory chip that goes into your Mac or your Windows machine, that is on the rise. Computer costs, right, is on the rise. Rising energy costs. I don't know if you know, but my electric bill here in Pennsylvania, I'm ready to march up to PPNL, as my mom used to say. I even check my own self and go, it's the old saying from when I used to live in New York. My mom used to say, we are not related to Con Edison. I am not related to PPNL. And it's crazy that year over year, right? It just increases, right? I just got another notice in the mail that said that my energy is going to go up 20%, right? But they're also putting a data center. Now, I live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Those that know, Lancaster, Pennsylvania is Amish country, right? But it's also a diverse small city in Pennsylvania. But they're putting like 3 data centers out near the farm, like in a farm, right? And so those rising costs are coming because those data centers are just constantly feeding itself, right? And
Yeah.
so be careful about those rising energy costs.
And I
The
think you heard a lot from Brother Rowe about that too, right? About just putting them in your backyard. Yeah. So I know he has a strong opinion about that. um, in our
so
community.
yeah, I put this other one out here, Brother Davis. There is a NAACP campaign, and I know that we have a great partnership with the NAACP. And when this presentation goes out, I highly recommend going to this link. This campaign is called Stop Dirty Data Centers. What we're seeing now across the tech industry is that these data centers are ended up in backyards that look like you and I. They are not caring where they put it. They're putting it in rural America, right? But most importantly, Black communities, right? And so we are the ones suffering when data centers come in, the pollution that it causes, right? An example here is, we have 3 Mile Island, right, where we've had nuclear, back in the 80s, a nuclear power plant. They're trying to revive that plant, right? But it's in the neighborhood in which people can't afford just the basic necessities, right? And so now you want to put something that dangerous back online because you want to feed artificial intelligence. I'm here to tell you we have got to make sure that we take a look at that in its totality, right, brothers, and really focus in on the rapidly expanding this in rural and urban Black communities. So please, when you do get this, do visit the link. I will say this. I am a proponent of artificial intelligence. I have built a lot of things on artificial intelligence. I have studied it, but I'm also very a good proponent of the good things versus the bad things, right? And so these are just some of the highlights I want to bring up. Do I think it will get better? Yes. But at the rate in which we're going and the rate at which we're adopting, we're not thinking about the core pieces of what's happening to our environment, right? And what's happening to our communities because we want to just type in, hey, AI, go ahead and type my name in and kind of generate this image of me, this caricature, right, that has all these things on it. And we don't understand how much energy that takes to make that. And so, with that being said, I want to thank you, brothers. I want to thank you again for giving me this opportunity to chat with you all. I have my information here. Brother Davis has my information. I think my information is also available in the blueprint. But I am available, to take any questions, Brother Davis. And thank you to the, Dr. Rowe and the team for allowing me to come and speak today.